it's time for us to get into consumer tech. And at this point in time, we have our guest here in studio. Philip Kofi Ashon is the host of City Trends and also the head of TV production here at City TV. And we're going to be talking about app permissions for your mobile devices. And Philip, good morning.
Well, good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
All right. So, you know, sometimes you're fiddling with your phone and you install a new app and then it says, oh, you know, this particular app would like to use your microphone, right. Yes or no, and all that. That's what we're talking about.
But just as a general introduction, app permissions or software permissions and things within that is basically a software that you typically will put on either your laptop or your phone or your tablet, having certain privileges to use certain bits of your device. It can be, like you said, it can be the camera, it can be access to your contacts, it can be access to your SMS, it can be access to literally anything that you know your device comes with that allows you to communicate with something outside or someone outside. Like I said, there are app permissions or permissions that you need to sometimes grant even on laptops. It might not be as pronounced as what you see on a phone, but then if you have a very good antivirus installed on your laptop, it's most likely you have come across some of these permissions that you have to grant a software in terms of access to a part of the hardware or something like that. But today we're talking about mobile devices and for good reason, because we spend quite a lot of our time with our mobile devices. Now, these app permissions vary. And like I said, it's all about the access or the privileges that you grant this app to different parts of your device. It can be a system level permission, or it can be specific to a particular feature on the phone. System-wide means it has access to literally everything, you know, on your device, you know, right from the underground. It can also be specific, either to SMS, either to contacts, either to writing or reading off your memory. It can be that specific. And so the permissions are varied and very different. Now, the reason why we need to pay attention to these app permissions is because the level of access you give to a particular app will determine what it can do to either harm you or help you. Now, it's not everybody who develops an app who necessarily has your best interest at heart. Some of these app developers, at least the verified ones, you know, your typical ones, Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, even TikTok sometimes a bit questionable in terms of the access it requires. But a lot of these well-established businesses and app developers at least let you know what sort of permissions you are granting, and will let you know when, for example, it wants to cross a certain line. Some of the apps, and I'm sure some of our viewers today have experienced this situation where they are being granted, like they don't want to grant a certain access, and that app basically would not work. You've gotten to that point where you are ticking off, you know, what you've installed, you've opened it, it's asking for permissions, you've ticked off a number of them, and then the app wouldn't launch. It happens. That should obviously raise a red flag, because there are certain things, for example, that an app should not, I am thinking an app should not be getting access to. For example, if you've downloaded a torch, you know, app, you know, just to control the lights in case there's a blackout or something, and it's asking for Wi-Fi access and location access. That's kind of weird. I just want my lights on. So you're literally going to get access to the camera or something, but what are you doing with my Wi-Fi access? You get me? Or what is, you know, an app like that doing with access to my contacts? Is it going to send light to my contacts? Like, you should be able to figure out which app am I downloading, what role is it going to play in my life, and be able to determine which permissions is asking for.
That's very interesting.
Should give you a sense to be cautious. And I think that sometimes we just download the app and use it, forgetting that your data could be harvested for a number of things. And so it's not every app that necessarily is malicious. Nobody, a lot of these very good app developers really develop these apps, you know, most often to make their money, obviously, by your usage of the app, and then sometimes just to make life much easier for you. So it's not every time that they set out to do something malicious, but then, you know, things happen. The world is the world, and people sometimes use certain things for just malicious things. And so it's always best for you to be looking out for yourself, you know, in terms of which permissions you give which apps on your mobile device. So for most people who use most phones. I mean, I'm sure most people are using either Android or iOS who are watching us at this moment. Some few people are still dabbling with Windows Phone. I'm not sure why, but hey, it's fine. But whichever phone or mobile device you're using, it's most likely going to be an Android-based system or it's going to be an iOS-based system. And most of them are pretty straightforward. You just literally go into your settings, you go into your app notifications, you go into permissions. It's pretty straightforward like that. For Android users, you basically just go into settings, app notifications, permissions, and then sometimes you can get into the permissions manager, which offers you a few more details than you typically expect. So for most people who use Android, I'm sure you've come across this screen where you basically will see all the app permissions. For example, this is calendar. So with calendar, it most likely comes as a stock app in the Android operating system. And so here you have a list of all the apps that are using or having access to your calendar. So you can actually go into the app permissions, like I said, settings, app and notifications, permissions, and then you can have access to all of this. So depending on the app, you will know what sort of permission it is seeking or it is using currently. So there you go. So this is one of the things that sometimes often comes up. So location permission. So you have an app like Google Maps, and sometimes depending on the restrictions you've set, it would basically ask allow to use all the time, allow only when the app is in use, or basically just deny. Just understand that when you deny an app certain permissions, because this one I'm guessing is asking for location, that's why it says location permission. If you deny it, it's going to affect a certain level of the functionality of the app. If it is a Google Map, of course it needs access to your location to be able to give you the best route to where you're going. But if you don't allow it, it's going to be kind of difficult for it to do it. Now remember, for example, that if you want the most accurate location data, it is a combination of access to your GPS and then access to your Wi-Fi, and mobile location and mobile data as much as possible. That's how they're able to pinpoint exactly where you are. So if you deny access, it's going to affect it. But I would say that deny access only if and when you are unsure about the mobile app you're using. People can recommend mobile apps, and we do that on City Trends every Tuesday. But if you see the app, any app at all, and you read about the app, so typically you go to the App Store, you read a bit about it before you download the app. When you read it and you see the permissions it's asking for, and you don't think it tallies with what the app is supposed to do for you, my best advice, skip it. There's usually a better verified version of that mobile application out there that you can look for, someone who's more credible than that, because what is the app using that extra information for really if it is not something that is questionable? So I would always advise that you always look out for these permissions before you install it. When you go to the Google Play Store, for example, and you search in an app and you hit the app, before you install, scroll all the way down to the bottom. You will see a notification there that basically is telling you that when you click this, it will show you all the permissions that the app is actually asking for. So when you hit it, it will show you whether it's location, it's SMS, it is reading or writing information, whichever it is, it will list all of it for you. When you look through that list, you basically get a sense of, and so this is the permissions manager that I was talking about. So I mean, you have body sensors, you have calendar, you have call logs, you have camera, you have contact, so all of these things, so when you click, for example, on body sensors, as you can see there, 0 out of 1 apps have been allowed. And so the permissions manager lists all the sorts of permissions that are possible on the device, and then it gives you which apps are using which permission. So for example, for calendar, you can see there 4 out of 14 apps have been allowed, 4 out of 17 apps have been allowed. Call logs, you can see that 3 out of, I believe, 6 apps have been allowed. So it gives you a breakdown. Looks like this person enjoys using the camera a lot, because out of 17 apps downloaded on that person's device, 19 of them have been given access to the camera. I mean, depending on what you're using it for, it could be, TikTok, if you want to take a selfie or you want to, do whatever. So depending on what you're using your devices for, the apps for. The permissions manager offers you a good sort of overview of which apps have access to which parts of the device. And sometimes it helps. On a Sunday or a Saturday, if you have some time on your hands, it doesn't really kill to just go through these permissions that have been enabled on the device.
I think this is very good to know, because, I mean, constantly one has been using these things and seeing, you know, this app wants access, this app wants
access,
without actually paying much attention. You know, it's like almost like people who don't read their manuals before they get into it.
Before they get into it, exactly.
So just say, okay, you know, and
because
just
you're in a bit of a hurry to use the app. You know, if all your friends are using a particular app, why not? You know, you want to connect with your friends. It doesn't really hurt too much. But then what it will hurt is when you actually use the app and it ends up, you know, harming you at the end of the day. So I just wanted us to run through quickly just some of typically the permissions are available on most mobile devices. So we have the body sensor, we have the calendar, we have the camera, we have the contacts, we have the location, we have microphone, we have the phone, we have SMS, and then we have storage. So typically most devices have all these permissions that you can have access to.
Both Android and iOS?
Yes, both Android and iOS. And because typically these are the parts of the device that it's either because for body sensor, for example, it's giving you a sense of your tracking data, your health data, you know, all those things. And it could either be connected to a third-party app. For example, the Fitbit, for example, which will tap into, you know, all of this body sensor information. So if you are collecting data about your movements, the number of steps that you take, and all those other things, body sensor literally is where all of this information will be found. Calendar, whether it's reading or writing or saving. For example, you have a Zoom meeting, they send you a request or something like that. You can book into the calendar. If you don't give access to Zoom to your calendar, it won't be written into your calendar. So you need those permissions. The camera, obviously, if you want to take a selfie, you want to take a picture. You know, some of Google Maps, for example, has this new feature where you can mount the phone, you know, on whatever. And then using augmented reality, you know, it's able to superimpose the directions onto the phone. So it is not just, you know, your 2D map or something, but then it's literally like, gives you a 3D sort of impression about where you're going. If you don't allow your camera, I mean, obviously that won't happen. Contacts, either saving contacts or reading off contacts. You want to share a link to your friend from an app. If you don't grant access to, for example, Twitter, to be able to share a link that you found on Twitter, it won't happen. So you have to grant that access. Location, like we said, you want to go someplace, you need to find the place. If you don't grant access, it will not happen. And like I said, microphone, the phone, SMS storage, all these are possible permissions that are available on most devices. And you have to keep a sharp eye out, you know, for what apps are using or getting access to these. Now, there are a number of permissions that initially, when you pick up an app or you see an app, look out for these permissions, because if the app is asking for access to these permissions, it's most likely you will be compromised, especially if the app is not that trustworthy. The first one, when an app is asking to authenticate your account, you have to be very wary of it. For big companies like Google, like Facebook, which are necessarily integrated with your email and things like that, you could forgive them. You could understand it, obviously, because they need access to authenticate your, you know, your identity. For example, you are signing on to Canva or some other, you know, platform. Most people don't use their email and password. They connect through a social media platform, either Google or Facebook. So Facebook will need to necessarily authenticate your identity. So it's understandable like that. But then when you have a random app that a friend recommended that wants to authenticate the account or wants to authenticate your identity, that's a red flag. You should not grant access to such apps. If it is a trustworthy app, has a proven track record, yes, it's understandable. And it must make sense. Google, Facebook, Instagram, to a point, asking you to use, you know, to asking access to authenticate your identity is understandable, because you're going to use them to access some app or something like that. But then if it's not an app on that level, I think you should probably run away from that. The second one is when it wants to read sensitive log data. You might not think that the log information on your phone is a big deal. But do you know that even how you swipe or the way you type, all of that data is saved? So for example, how you type in your password, the process that you use, if it's a swiping process or it is a typing process, all of that data is being stored from time to time. Now imagine someone having access to how you type or your typing pattern. They will be able to figure out what your password is over a period of time. And so if an app is asking for your log data, it's something that you have to be very, very, very wary of before you grant any access. Reading contacts. Some people might think, it's just a phone number, whatever. But if they have access to your contacts, remember some of your contacts, you saved their email address attached to the phone. What it means is that someone who is looking to do something really bad will have access to their email and then we'll be able to send them spoof emails or spam emails and then be able to hack their account or even your account, you know, by extension. So if an app is asking to read your contacts as well, you have to be able to connect. Is this app really needed?
Does it actually need
access to my accounts? You have to ask about that. And then calendar data as well. It might not be a big deal, but then if someone has access to your calendar, they'll have access to where you're going, what you're doing, when you're doing what you're doing, and they'll be able to access or at least target certain things at you that, you know, could harm you in future. So for me, authenticating accounts, reading sensitive log data, reading contacts, and then calendar data for me are my top 4. If an app is asking access to any of these, you really have to take a second look at the app and then figure out if it's really worth giving them access or not. And for me, one of the last things I would like to say, that is, if there's an app that, for example, you've already granted permission to certain parts of your device, when you turn off those permissions and the app keeps crashing or it becomes unresponsive or something like that, it's something that you need to watch out for, because most modern mobile applications will still function regardless of the access that you've denied. It's only when that access is requested that, you know, it will ask you for it. So if you remove certain permissions and an app becomes dodgy, it is crashing, it is, you know, not being as functional as it's supposed to be, you need to ask questions about that mobile app.
Wow. Okay, so when I remember there was a time that I turned on, I think it's location for WhatsApp, and I think I was doing a sharing of you know, location. Now I realized that typically when you turn on the, you know, the permissions for it to use whilst the app is always keep it on.
It's just going to stay on.
It just stays on. You forget that you've turned it on, right?
But what is it like live location?
Yes.
It will stay on for as long as you give it.
But what I found really good about WhatsApp is that they remind you after a day or two that it's on.
It's on.
So you then gives you the choice to go and turn it off.
And those are the sort of mobile applications that, you know, you should be putting a bit of trust in, because they're actually looking out for you. There are apps that won't give you that privilege of a notification. They'll still continue to harvest your location data, figure out where you're going. And imagine if someone wants to figure out where your bank is, or they can track you for a period of 2 weeks and know where exactly you've been, which bank branches you go to, and be able to, if they want, map out your life and then figure out when to attack, when not to attack, and things like that. And so, I mean, it's great that an app like WhatsApp will give you that, but it's not all apps that are looking out for your good. So, like I said, look, you have to be very responsible, you have to be very careful. The apps are great, they enable us, they help us to do a number of things, but sometimes just sit back, look at, just go into your settings, go into privacy, check out the apps that are available on your device that you're using, and then look at the permissions that you've granted them and see what information they're harvesting or probably reading about you. If you feel it doesn't tally with what you expect it to do, it's about time you switch it off,
it down,
or you just delete the app and have a good day.
All right. Well, you heard it. Delete the app and have a good day. Thank you very much to Philip Kofi Ashon, who is the host of City Trends on 97.3 City FM and also the head of production here at City TV.
Hi there. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends.
This is Breakfast Daily on City TV.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Join us for breakfast daily, only on City TV.